had the results.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, to be honest with you, probably, as we said on the video the other day, Andy Burnham was going to win. But I don't think people actually conceived of the margin by which he was going to do it. I mean, obviously 55% is a huge chunk of the vote. And all the polls, the official polls, had him, between sort of 40 and 50%, so he's sort of there. But I think a lot of people seem to underestimate quite how well Andy Burnham was going to do.
Yeah. Would you call this a landslide victory?
Yeah, I think I would. I think a lot of people have clearly sort of put their name behind him, as you've seen, and there was a large voter turnout, so it wasn't even like he sort of picked over the scraps.
Yeah, obviously, like, we got our predictions quite wrong in terms of the percentage of votes, but we got the general order of the parties winning correct.
That's it. I mean, I think it was fairly obvious sort of from the outset what was going to happen. Once Andy Burnham put his name in the hat, so to speak, it was clear he was going to win.
His name carries a lot of weight up here.
It does, and quite clearly for a lot of people, it was clear on that sort of left wing side of the political spectrum that they were all willing to effectively tactically vote and get behind him and get going, which obviously they wouldn't have done on the right hand side. But admittedly, both those votes together weren't sufficient actually to beat the Andy Burnham effect.
So that split in the vote argument was kind of void, because Reform on 35%, Restore on 7%, and Andy Burnham on 55%. So even if those votes were totaled together, it was reached 55.
Well, I mean, we'll come on to Reform and to Restore probably a little bit later on. Let's focus now just a little bit on Andy Burnham. Obviously, I think a lot of people that we spoke to, generally, both on video, both on just out and about, I think they came across and saying, we're not fans of Labour, but we do like Andy.
Yeah, we're not fans of we hate Starmer.
I think the one thing about this election is it was almost the referendum on how much everybody hates Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
You've got each party effectively vying to say we're the ones who are going to be able to finally kick him out. So yeah, for Keir Starmer, not a particularly brilliant time, but Andy Burnham, wow, he can come forth now with quite a strong mandate from the people of Makerfield, and he can say, look, I've beaten Nigel Farage in a constituency that the demographics would suggest that he would do quite well.
Well, yeah, even the local elections a few months ago did pretty well.
That's it. Reform's vote share down from the local elections has dropped quite considerably, and I think that would probably be a bit of a cause for concern for them. I think from Andy's perspective, he can come out and said, actually, I've increased Labour's vote share, but also I've corralled the disparate parts of the left behind me insofar as he saw off any challenge from the Greens or the Lib Dems. So I think he can come in quite strong into any potential leadership contest with Keir Starmer. How far that will go, we get the impression that Keir Starmer is perfectly willing to sit there and fight this one. We'll have to see, but yeah, I think from Andy Burnham's perspective, probably couldn't have gone much better.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think he ran a good campaign in general, or Labour ran a good campaign in Makerfield?
It's difficult to say really, because I'm actually not quite sure what Andy Burnham's campaign was. Quite vibes based. I think it was our Andy, vote Andy for us.
Vote Andy for us.
It was an overall message that he was creating a vibe that he was going to come and save the Labour Party.
He's going to repair it, yeah.
That's it. He was going to restore the reputation of this party that, as we said before, has found itself somewhat in an existential crisis. And I think that narrative that swelled up behind it was what was driving him forward. He went on Question Time, probably didn't expect too much of a difficult time, didn't really have one. And yeah, he's kind of sailed his way through. I think he's benefited from the fact that a lot of the Reform concentration has actually been on this split the vote argument.
Yeah.
He's not had to deal too much from that. He's lived off the fact that as Mayor of Manchester, he's done a lot of, as we said, visible things, and a lot of maybe the potential consequences of that won't come home. At least while he's going to be mayor, as we've seen now, he's going to leave.
So what does this mean for the people of Makerfield and for 10 Downing Street?
I mean, I think for the people of Makerfield, I think they will go down potentially as a moment in history, depending on what the outcome of this is. If Andy Burnham comes out and does restore the Labour Party and manages to make them an electoral success, then that is a big shift in the way that this whole story about the way the next sort of 4 years was going to go had been concocted to this point.
I think for the people of Makerfield, they weren't just voting for a local MP; they were voting for the next Prime Minister, because they were expecting. I think a lot of them were expecting Andy to challenge Starmer, which I think he will do. And given that he said that he's got the backing of 81, is it 81 members.
Yeah, that's how much he'd need. I think based on this, he can make a quite compelling case to get them. So I think, for the people of Makerfield, they'll probably not see too much of him if he becomes Prime Minister. That's just the nature of it. But they may themselves go down in history as a vital constituency in a vital by-election. But
yeah, I think for the Labour Party in general, this is kind of their last hope of a saving grace.
It definitely was, because I mean, if they keep Keir Starmer, and even they're on a hiding to nothing, I think they're genuinely going to get wiped out. He's becoming more unpopular by the day, so you think that this is. I can't see them not going for it, but who knows? The world's a bit crazy at the moment, and things keep happening. But yeah, let's see. I think Andy Burnham's going to challenge. I think he's going to do it relatively soon, and I think
I think he'll do relatively well.
I have to assume so, because he's got a compelling case. Keir Starmer's is plummeting, and his popularity has just been resoundingly reinforced.
Yeah, but he's not gonna back down about a fight.
Well, no, he's not. But ultimately, I don't think, from the perspective of us on the ground, the ones who have to live with the consequences of the policies that they make, I think ultimately it's not going to make a blind bit of difference. He's not going to radically change the policies of the party, because ultimately it is not just one man and one MP. It is a giant machine that would need turning around like a barge. And does he have... Yeah, it's one thing doing it as Mayor of Manchester, it's another thing doing it as Prime Minister of the country. Yeah. And I think he's going to find himself come unstuck.
Yeah, I think the ship of Labour is already sailing in one direction, heading for a downward spiral. Just changing the captain without changing the direction that he's leading is not going to be beneficial to this country, or it's going to change too much, really.
No, and I think... You never want to say it's too late, but I mean, I think we're fast approaching that point. I think that he's not prepared to implement the policies that are required in order to be able to turn the ship around. And his popularity now is positive, because, to be honest with you, he's been out of the limelight of what's been going on down in Westminster. As soon as he comes under that spotlight, his popularity will plummet, because he won't have the answers, because none of them do.
Yeah, and with the popularity thing, he's the only MP with a positive rating, isn't he? Like +4.
He is, but like I said, I think once he gets into power and he has to start making difficult decisions, I think that popularity will quickly dissipate.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, well now he's the MP for Makerfield. There'll be a Mayor of Manchester election very soon.
Yeah, there will be, and obviously we'll be out and about covering that. The real question is, following the local elections, with the Greens flipping a lot of the Labour votes within the sort of city centre areas, it'll be interesting to see to what extent that plays out on the mayoral election side. Do the Greens... I think personally that they're going to throw the kitchen sink at this one. I think they realised quite quickly that they weren't going to do very well in Makerfield, and I think they said, right, we'll save the budget, we'll go up Manchester mayor election hard. So I expect them to come out fighting. I expect that we'll see Zach Polanski. I expect that we'll see Hannah Spencer out and about. So yeah, I think they're going to be ones to watch. I think they're going to be quite aggressive in campaigning. I think there's a lot of areas that fit the sort of their voter base.
Yeah, I mean, generally Manchester's a very leftist stronghold.
Manchester's typically very left wing. I mean, it's been historically almost exclusively Labour. And I think, once again, the fact that their only recent swing was towards the left option, which was the Green Party, I think indicates, that's not particularly changed. And also, you've got to remember that, that we've got a large student population here. They'll be very popular in those constituencies as well. So, let's move on then next to Reform, who I think everyone expected to be the big challengers, and who all the polls had substantially closer than they ended up being. They did gain 3 points on their previous general election result. Okay. But Labour substantially increased their vote share, and actually it looks like a lot of people came out for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
And voted for Andy Burnham.
Yeah. I think on the left, on the right, we had the argument of splitting the vote, and I think on the left they are joining the votes together, and that's why Andy Burnham got in. Yeah. So Reform did suffer somewhat of a significant defeat in Makerfield, because all the polls were expecting them to be much higher, and they came in at even 20% less than Labour. I think that speaks volumes about where they're at right now. They're always finishing second in by-elections. Yeah, do you know what? They're like Arsenal. They've got the old Arsenal Arteta mould in them, where they just keep finishing second. They can't get it over the line, and it's been a recurring theme for them in by-elections. I don't think they're going to be like Arsenal and actually win something anytime soon, unless they make drastic changes now and have a strong identity of what kind of party they want to be, what people do they want voting for them going forward from here on.
Right, so your take being that Nigel Farage is the Mikel Arteta of politics. I agree.
At the minute he is.
He is a cringe merchant who comes second all the time, so I will agree. Obviously, for the sake of the audience, he is an Arsenal fan, so,
And he's a City fan.
It's fine. I think realistically we have to take a look at this seriously. You can't take it in isolation, because it's not something that's going in isolation. Obviously, the Gorton and Denton by-election, they campaigned pretty poorly in that one as well. And that once, okay, an accident, twice, if it happens again, does it start to become a pattern that they need to be seriously worried about? I think Nigel Farage's character's come under fire a little bit, and I think people have found it wanting. And I think the candidate probably wasn't a brilliant choice. I think his unwillingness to show that could... I understand that there is an argument about whether or not, it's right to dish up things from people's pasts, and, that would, in the grand scheme of things, seem either relatively innocuous or just, in bad taste. But I think there's also a part of which you've got to be politically aware enough that you have to demonstrate there is an element of contriteness and development in your views. And I think that's where he failed. I think when he was on that question time, he didn't really apologise. Actually, he just tried to weasel his way out of it.
Yeah, he was deflecting a lot.
That was it. And I think that probably turned more people off against him than if he'd just come out and literally just said, you know what, I said them, it was inadvisable, I was wrong, it was just a joke, I apologise, I wouldn't say those things again, let's move on. And you know what, I think there will be people who never accept that, but they're never going to vote for you anyway. And I think there are some people who would accept that, who you potentially could have turned around. And I think his failure to handle those attacks probably hurt him. And I think the fact that, like you said, the other options where he was offered policy opportunities, he simply deflected to whoever the person in charge at the time would be. So I think, obviously, it's difficult to criticise them too much ultimately, because the position is, I don't think they'd have won no matter what. I think this Andy Burnham wave is effectively what has carried the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that was the main story of it.
That's it. The narrative carried through, and I think in the cold light of day, I think it's very easy to see that was what was always going to happen. And I think from Reform's perspective, they just have to question a couple of things, and I think ultimately it's, why was there a second time where the momentum didn't feel quite right? And I think why they struggled to attract people to their platform. And I think the unfortunate thing behind that is they'd have to look at the leader, and the way that Reform's set up, that's not something they're going to be able to change, at least without his agreement, effectively, which I assume he's not going to give.
He's not a very agreeable person.
No, and so it comes to say what happens, because these guys have been out. They've had the grand narrative in their head. We're going to win in 2029. This Labour government is just a temporary thing we all have to get through because people ultimately change their minds.
Yeah, the narrative was that they are the main challenging force to the Labour Party.
Yeah, that's it. And they've gone so far as calling their shadow this and shadow chancellor. It's like, whoa, you are believing your own hype, and it's starting to look a little bit embarrassing, because if you are this party on this grand movement, as so you say, you would start to pick up results. And okay, you did well at the local elections, but local elections aren't necessarily a bellwether for general elections or for parliamentary elections. We've seen that with Makerfield. So I don't know what they do. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how they decide to contest the Manchester mayoral election, because once again, as we say, it's a left-wing area. It's not an area that people would expect Reform to do well in. So is this an opportunity for them to come out and actually now say, we're going to stand on principle rather than on trying to play games, rather than trying to argue about splitting the vote, whether we're going to try and start... They created this narrative that Andy Burnham was basically Chairman Mao, and it's just ridiculous. Like as we said, it's starting to get difficult to take them seriously because they're not serious people. Nigel Farage is not a serious person, and ultimately, that's probably what Andy Burnham had as well. Like him or not, at least he is he is a serious person.
He's a credible politician.
He's a credible individual. I don't look at him and think so much that he's a crook. I look at him and I think a lot of things. But, I don't necessarily think that he's corrupt. And I don't think he's for sale quite in the way as the same man who says up the Ra on his bloody whatever it is, cameo.
Yeah, it's cameo, yeah.
Like, come on. That's the calibre of the person that's being put before us and being told that this is the next Prime Minister. And I think a lot of people are turning around and going,
well, he's playing the same card Boris was playing before, as like using his own personal brand to get through, to get the votes in.
That's it, but I think people have been won off by that because of what happened with Boris.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
So he needs to seriously start working out exactly what his voter base is going to be, because he's siphoning votes to the centre, I suppose, or the centre-left through the Tories into Labour, and he's siphoning votes off on the right to Restore. So he's going to find his niche increasingly squeezed, and unless he works out quite who that is and starts actually doing what he needs to do to appeal to them, and then start to have other people outside that sphere of people take him seriously, they're going to struggle, I think, actually.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really interesting things is actually maybe not in what happened in Makerfield, but what happened in other parts of the UK, which was the Conservatives won up in Scotland.
Yeah.
Which, obviously we've not covered very much of that. I'm not very aware what's going on. But it's a fairly resounding win for Kemi Badenoch, and it could certainly it could be a point at which to say, actually, the Tory party still has some element to play, especially in those maybe more conservative, more right-wing leaning areas, but that aren't quite prepared to go to Reform, especially in Scotland, Wales, maybe Northern Ireland, just simply because the Reform brand carries an element of Englishness as well to it.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned Wales as well, because Reform lost in the Senate elections to Plaid Cymru, didn't they?
Well, that's it, and I think ultimately Reform is going to struggle because Reform are very English coded, and I think that's going to create a problem for them because they have they're going to struggle in the
representing Wales and
in the regional
Scotland and
countries of
Northern
of the United Kingdom.
Ireland.
And they're not holding on to England too brilliantly. If I was them, I'd start to be a little bit worried, and I think there are enough people in that party who have enough political nous about them that some of them are going to start to see it. And what happens when that happens, who knows? But I mean, I do still suspect they'll hang around.
Yeah.
And they'll effectively innate the same structure.
Do you think that this is their peak now?
I mean, unless they start to do something to turn it around, I think it very possibly could be, simply because people seem to start to be seeing through it.
Yeah, people are noticing things.
That's it. Once you start to notice, you can't stop noticing. Okay, so from the perspective of reform, they've been losing, as we said, some voters off to the left.
Yeah.
But they have been losing votes to the right. And I think we have to talk a little bit about Restore Britain. Obviously, when we were out, we met a lot of the canvassers. There seemed to be a lot of canvassers down there. We also met a couple of people who, completely unprompted, were talking to us about them. I think the energy on the ground actually for Restore felt pretty positive. I think
everyone was very enthusiastic. Everyone was very hopeful. And they had a very strong ground game. There was a lot of people.
There was. I mean, we were down on that Saturday. We were sorting about, and I think that the Reform group had about 200. I think the Labour probably had about 100 or so. But I think the Restore said they had about 1,200 down there.
Yeah.
I mean, for a party that set up only 4 months ago, that's insane. And I think that from a lot of what we were hearing from their own internal polling and from some of the other parties' internal polling suggested that they were going to do, not that they were going to win it, not even necessarily that they were going to come second, but that they were going to come strong third, and that maybe they might get into the double digits. Yeah. And I think from Restore's perspective, I think that they're going to be naturally. I think they're going to be in two minds. I think they're going to come out of this and they're going to go, in the initial moment, they're going to feel a bit deflated, naturally, because I think that they felt that energy and thought and didn't recognise that not all of that would ultimately translate into a vote.
Yeah, I think there was an expectation that they'd do much better than what the polls suggested and what the results actually suggested. But the polling and the results were actually quite similar, about 6 to 8%.
That's it. They ended up with about 7%, which I think ultimately for a new party formed sort of 4 or 5 months ago, running in their first campaign. That's really strong.
It's a good result.
I mean, they
scheme of things.
They beat the Conservatives, they beat the Lib Dems, they beat the Greens, who are far more established parties. I think they came a comfortable third.
Yeah. I think there was a lack of expectation management, though. I know their poll suggested around 20 to 25% supported Restore, but like you said before, support in saying that you support a party, you like their views, you like the leader, doesn't necessarily translate to actual votes on the day. So, although I think there was a large sentiment of support behind Restore on the ground game, and from what we observed, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes, like you said, on the day. I think people recognise that Restore was a brand new party, and it might have been a wasted vote voting for them, even though they do support them secretly, or they have a strong sentiment for them. But I think a lot of people do just want Starmer out. That was the main storyline, and this Restore party was like a little side story, side quest.
Yeah,
that's come in through a span in the works.
I mean, I think that's completely fair. I think from Restore's perspective, in the cold light of day, they will look at that and I think they'll feel relatively positive. I think that Reform probably now have to look and see actually what our Restore offering that's taking away, okay, in this occasion, not enough to swing the vote, but the chances of this situation being replicated in other constituencies is not very high. So reform are going to have to start to look, especially because it looks like that could be the point at which it would cost them the vote in a number of constituencies that if they're highly contested.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to work out very quickly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And Restore, I think they've had a good opportunity here. It was a very last minute thing in terms of this wasn't expected to be announced. It can't have been planned.
Yeah.
This won't have been their intention to have gone to their first election. But I think they came out and they said, you know what, they're established as a political party and they're going to fight it.
Yeah, I think on top of that, they didn't have. I think on top of that, they didn't have the resources or time to actually build up that much momentum, even though there was a lot of people coming over and helping with the ground game.
Rupert Lowe, I've just seen announced today that Restore will be running a candidate in the Manchester mayoral election. So they're obviously feeling very keen, feeling very enthused, and actually they think they can crack on and contest here.
Yeah, well, I think most parties will do. Everyone's going to do their best and probably, like you said, throw the kitchen sink at it.
That's it. It'll be very interesting because actually I think when normally a mayoral election isn't exactly hot topic news for a lot of people, it'll be very interesting to see quite if this is a more reflection of the balance, than, especially in the cities. So you're going to see it probably fairly similar results in and around Birmingham and London, which is a lot of people, and I think it gives you a really good opportunity to get possibly a gauge outside of the Burnham hysteria. It's also quite interesting simply because it is the seat that he's been leaving, and it's quite interesting to see actually do the people of Manchester want to go with Labour again following Andy Burnham? I have to assume that they probably would. But yeah, we'll have to see what they want to do. It'll be once again, if Labour retain the mayoral seat, it will once again be a positive reinforcement for Andy Burnham because he's left a seat and managed to keep it within the party sphere. So,
Give me even more of a mandate.
That's it. It's all grist to the mill from Andy Burnham's perspective. So I'm sure he'll be very keen to get on and have the mayoral election as well. I know Keir Starmer will want that to be the prime focus of the immediate thing because ultimately it takes the focus away from Andy Burnham doing a leadership challenge against him. But we'll see, and it'll be an interesting one to watch because it's right on our doorstep. So we can have a bit of a lie-in this time. Yeah. So, I think next time we'll go out on the streets. I think we'll start to ask people about what they think Andy Burnham's legacy is and potentially what they make of him as a new Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what the people of Manchester think about that because, we're the ones who had the experience and I'm sure there'll be mixed views.